Good day to you all. This is my first video since I published on YouTube my film, Megaliths Forgotten World. And I suppose many of you watching will be here because you've seen the film. Now, today what I want to talk about is a fantastic discovery that's been made recently in Sumeria. And I want to show how this discovery and the work that's been done around it is similar to things that I presented in the film. So let's get started. So first of all, this is going to be the first one of a series of short films called Sumerian Mysteries. And today I want to talk about a video that was published on the British Museum YouTube channel called Lost Temple of Maths. It features the archaeologist Sebastian Ray from the museum, who has done a lot of study in Sumeria and archaeological digs, and he's accompanied by a mathematician from a YouTube channel. Now, you can see that the mathematician is holding a kind of transparent disc, which is a plan, a ground plan of some building. And this is the discovery that's been made. Now, this plan was found on a statue. This statue, you can see, is of a prince from Sumeria. He's called Gudea, and he was prince of Lagash, which is an area in Sumeria. This statue is called the statue of the architect with a plan, and it was dedicated to the god Ningersu. It dates from around 2120 BC. So 4,144 years ago. It's made out of diorite, and it's in room 228 at the Louvre Museum. Now, 19 statues of Gudea have been found, 8 of which are on display at the Louvre Museum and others which are in the British Museum. Two of those statues have a graduated ruler on them. One's called the architect with a plan, and the other, the architect with a ruler. Okay, here is the architect with a plan, and this is the plan that he has on his knees. Okay, so you can see it's quite clearly the ground plan of some building, something. And this is what we're going to be looking at today. Now, archaeologists in the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century spent years, 140 years altogether, looking for this temple. Because it had been found, a plan of it had been found, it seemed very important to find it. And they were digging for a very long time and could find no trace. And so eventually they gave up. But people from the British Museum and perhaps from other countries restarted research in this area in Iraq, and it's in southern Iraq, which used to be called Sumeria. And they started a new dig in that area. And there were some discoveries were made. So you can see Sebastian Ray talking about the discoveries and showing the photos. And you can see here the video. You really should watch this video. If you want to understand more about what I'm going to be talking about, then you should watch this video, The Lost Temple of Math, which you can find in the description below. You'll find a link to it. And it's very interesting, very well made, and good rhythm and funny, exciting. It's a very, very good video. Definitely worth a watch. And so here you can see that what was discovered when the archaeological dig took place. It's quite deep under the ground, but it seemed to resemble the shape, a part of the shape from the plan. Okay, So Sebastian Rey, he decided to use this to organize his archaeological dig. Now, he had a bit of disagreement on the fact to do this. People thought that he was imagining things, but he went ahead. He managed to go through with this, and so he located different places where he thought he would dig to try and find different things. So the first dig, they found a doorway, you see. So here you can see there's a doorway. That's where there was the first dig. And then they decided to dig here and another spot here, which is under the fingers here. And this is finally what they discovered. Now you have to be careful because we follow the sort of archaeological shapes, of these the shapes of the dig themselves, and they're not the foundations. But basically, what they discovered in the three spots he digged at, he discovered the shape according to the plan. So this is very, very interesting and very exciting, of course. Work will carry on, I suppose, this summer. And maybe we'll get much more interesting information as little by little this temple is brought to light. So follow Sebastian Rey on his videos for that. Okay, so he used the ruler. So he got the ruler from the statue of the ruler. And here you can see a picture of the holding the ruler with the plan. And you can see how the ruler is graduated. So on one side of the ruler, you have these spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equal spaces. He's given them the length of x. Then you have a space which is divided into 2 parts here. Then a space divided into 3 parts, 4 parts, 5 parts, and 6 parts. Okay, there are 7 lines, so there are 6 divisions of this measurement, which we call x for the time being. It's a strange kind of ruler. We don't have rulers like this. It's linked to the sexagesimal system, which was the Sumerian system based on 60, which has given us our 60 minutes and 60 seconds for the division of time, and also the 360 degrees in the circle. So part of our present-day system is based on the Sumerian system, which is very important thing to realize. And so that's why they have these different divisions. So the unity x is divided into 2, into 3, into 4, into 5, and into 6, which enables it to be used in the sexagesimal system. So I don't know if you realize it. I've done a lot of work on the 3, 4, 5 triangle, but the sexagesimal system is 60 is 3 times 4 times 5. So this is a very useful number if you want to divide into different parts. So he uses the ruler on the plan to discover how the plan was built and what are the measurement units. And you see that the width here, you can see how he is showing the width of the walls. So the width of the wall is 1 unit, or with the outer part, but the actual wall itself is half a unit. Okay, so that is very interesting system. So by using that on the plan, they show how the plan uses different numbers of units, the three units, or half a unit, third of a unit, quarter of a unit, as you can see, used on this plan. Okay. Now, because they actually discovered the ruins underneath, they were able to measure the width of the wall, and they measured it at 4 meters. Which enables him in his video to say that half x equals 4 meters, or that x is equal to 8 meters. Now, this is interesting because he gives this measurement in whole numbers. He doesn't say it's 3.92 or he says 4 meters. He never comes back onto that measurement. He says x is 8 meters. And either he's approximating in a very strong way, or it's actually in meters, which is a rather strange thing for a lot of people. So let's come to the Sumerian measurements, because officially Sumerians didn't measure in meters. The basic unit of the Mesopotamian system is the cubit, like in Egypt, the Egyptian cubit, and in different countries, which in Sumerian is called amatu. And its value has been established. Now, say its value, there are different cubits, okay? So from standards carved on statues of Gudea, a value has been obtained, okay? So the ruler is divided into 16 parts altogether. The average value of each part is 16.5 millimeters. So each division, what we call x on the ruler, would be 16.5 millimeters. This is not in the film. This is information I'm giving to you. But so if we assume that each cubit is divided into 30 digits, so 16.5 millimeters would be one digit, which is about the width. It's about the width of a finger, okay? So if you hold up your finger, then it's about the width of one finger, okay? That's just an approximation, of course. It's not the measurement itself of somebody's finger. It's the word we use, like we use a foot, is an approximation. It's not somebody's foot. It's the closest thing on the human body to the measurement, okay? And there are different measurements for the feet. There you have the English foot or the Greek foot. There are different foot lengths and different finger lengths or finger widths, okay? Anyway, here, if we have 30 digits, it's called 30 digits in a cubit, 30 times 1.65 centimeters is 49.5 centimeters, and 2 cubits will be 99 centimeters. Now, that's very interesting because this measurement of 99 centimeters can be found in different places around the world, and in Tiwanaku in particular, we find the measurement 99 centimeters, 1 meter, and 101 meters. Okay, now we know that the value of the cubit varied from city to city, but even in the same city, different authorities use different standards. This is not through sort of approximation because they were approximate about their measurement systems. They had reasons for varying the size of the cubit. This is very important. It's important for us to understand what those reasons were, because they are very, very different from our modern day society and the important things in our modern day society. Okay, so it's very important for our society to have one system of measurement, and everybody uses the same system. In ancient societies, it seemed very important for there to be different systems of measurement used by different levels in the society. In other words, for doing different things. And we have what are called royal cubits and temple cubits, okay? So there is a difference, and this is found on the texts, that the royal cubit of Gudea was 1,000 royal cubits were worth 1,100 temple cubits, a ratio of 10 to 11. Okay, so the fact that there's this whole number ratio, an extra 10%, if you go from 10 to 11, you've added 10%, 1/10. The fact that there is a whole number fractional relationship between these different measurements is an indication quite clear that this wasn't just approximation, that there was a reason for these different measurements. So if the royal cubit is 49.9 centimeters, and that's 1,000 cubits will be 49,500 centimeters, then to discover the length of the temple cubit, you would divide by 1,100, which gives you 45 centimeters. So one temple cubit will be equal to 45 centimeters compared to 49.5 royal cubits, okay? And that in digits, because there will be 30, would give 1.5 centimeters for the size of the digit. Now here we're getting close to the meter, to the metric system, because that would mean that 2 digits would be 3 centimeters, okay? Which is another interesting fact. So let's look at the scale of this plan. Okay, so if they've managed to discover that x is 8 meters, if 8 meters is 1.65 centimeters on the plan, then the scale is 800 over 1.65, or 16,000 to 33, which is not the kind of scale we use. We would say 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 25,000. This will be 33 in 16,000, which is a strange ratio. If, on the other hand, the digit is 1.5 centimeters on the plan, then the scale would be 3 to 1,600, 1,600 over 3, or a scale of 3 units on the plan would be multiplied by 1,600 in the actual building itself, okay, which makes that very interesting. And if we were to put the scale in something which is like a reference we would have, say 1 in 500, then the unit would measure 8 meters or 800 centimeters divided by 500, which would be 1.6 centimeters, okay? That this is to show approximately the size of the building. Now, Sebastian Rey from the British Museum was kind enough to send me this beautiful copy of the ground plan of the temple, which comes from a photograph taken in the 19th century, and he assures me that it is not at all deformed, that it is perfectly taken in a vertical position. And what can be seen immediately from the plan is that the corners of the right angle here are not exactly right angles. So there's something going on here. We can see that this wall here is slightly sloped. These are perfect right angles on the right side. And all the bastions, all the walls are all perfect right angles, but there's a different angle going on here. Now, that's very interesting. I won't be going into that. That's going to be detail. I'm going to try and show the major elements that I've discovered by studying this plan. I had already studied it, and I'd done a video about it in French, but on an older plan, on a more deformed plan. So I'm very pleased to be able to present this work now, done on a very precise plan. So the first thing we can see is that in the bottom of the picture here, can we see here? You can see a kind of square, a yellow square. Now, this is the exact size. There's the ruler at the bottom of this plan. You can see the ruler here with the divisions. These are 6 divisions, 5 divisions, 4 divisions, 3 divisions, and 2 divisions of the unit here. And I've put a square there to show the exact size of this, okay? So this is going to be a very good help for us, because what we're going to discover is that if I go from this bottom corner on the left-hand side here, from the bottom corner on the left-hand side here. And I position a grid of 5 squares by 12 squares, which goes up to the top right-hand corner here. Then this grid is going to position the different walls inside the temple. Okay, it's a 5 by 12 grid, and we see that we have 3, and these squares are the size, each square is the size of the unit on the ruler, which has been given as 4 meters. So each square is 4 meters here. Okay, so that's 8 meters, sorry. It was half the unit was 4 meters, so the unit is 8 meters, okay? So this is very interesting, as we can see that these 5 units by 12 units really do well fit inside the structure. Now, as I said, this wall is slightly sloped, but apart from that, you can see here, this is 3 units, and we'll go into the details here. But of course, what's very interesting is that 5 by 12 is a Pythagorean triangle, the 5, 12, 13 triangle. And I've already shown in my previous work that this triangle was clearly used by the Sumerians, and it's actually written on a tablet, Plimpton 633, I can't remember the number, but there's a tablet, a Sumerian tablet, which mentions this triangle, the 5, 12, 13 triangle. So we can see how I've put some red lines on here, which show how the grid shows the changes on the inside wall of the temple. Okay, now I don't know if you can see it here. I've put another 5 by 12 grid right in the bottom corner here. It's a smaller, much smaller one. So we have 4 squares inside. So each little square here is 2 meters, okay, because the big square is 8 meters. And so we have 4 plus 1 square above it. And we can see how this actually fits into the bottom part, the bottom corner of the temple here. So this bottom corner of the temple is also 5 by 12. So it's a kind of reduced model of the whole thing. Okay, so that's very important. I've done another one here, and we can see how this grid is giving us 3 units here between this wall and this wall, okay? And 12 units here, okay? 3 times 4. So that's very important. Now, if we look at the corner here, the corner of this, and we trace the diagonal, so this small 5, 12, 13 comes into the corner here and goes up. So if I trace the diagonal of the whole thing, we can see how the diagonal of this smaller 5, 12, 13 goes through the corner and right up to the top here. Okay, so that's a very important point to notice, is that the bottom part here is an image of the whole thing. Okay, so the diagonal is 13 units. It's a whole number. That's very important. Now, I've compared here Sébastien Rey's drawing from his video with the plan here, and we can see how these squares, these small squares, measure half x. So 2 squares are half x, and 4 squares measure x. And you can see he has 3x from here to here, and we have 3 squares from here to here, 3 big squares, okay? This is the image of his drawing, 3x, and here you can see it on the plan. So this 5, 12, 13 triangle is in units as shown on the plan itself, which of course is very important. There I show the thickness of the wall, half x here, which is two of these squares. So half an x is 2 squares and is 4 meters. So x is 4 squares, 4 of my little squares, which is 2 meters. One of the little squares is 2 meters, and the big square is 8 meters. Okay. So if we look at from that measurement, we can see the measurement of the whole temple. So we can see that the inner dimensions of the temple, 96 meters, so 12 units of 8 meters, 96 meters on the length of the temple, and the width of the temple, 5 times 8, 40 meters. And because these are whole numbers, this gives us 104 meters on the diagonal, which is twice 52. This is very important. I've done a lot of work about the importance of the number 52 in the Mayan culture, for example. And of course, we have remnants of that with the 52 days of the week, a week of 7 days. So the appearance of 104 meters here on the diagonal is very interesting. Now, if we look at the upper part of the temple, here we can see a double square. So I've put this one in red. Okay, so this higher part here, this is an exact double square. So it's exactly twice as long as it is high. Okay, so this is a very common shape used in Egyptian temples. It's the shape of the chamber of the Great Pyramid. The king's chamber in the Great Pyramid is a double square at the base. It's a very, very important shape in ancient architecture. And here it is in this chamber, because we can see quite clearly that the width of the end of the temple, when it's doubled, goes exactly to the middle of the temple, okay? And so as that's the middle of the temple, we can reproduce this. We can put another identical double square, and that brings us to the corner, exactly to the corner here of the doorway entrance, okay? So here, this quadruple square, this is 2 double squares, so that makes a quadruple square, is 24 meters in width and 96 meters long, 1:4 ratio. Okay, so that has a diagonal. Now, an approximation of the square root of 17, because the diagonal of a quadruple square is the square root of 17 in our way of organizing things. So if we have 1 by 4, you would say 4 squared 16 plus 1 squared 1. 16 plus 1 is 17. And so the diagonal is the ratio of the square root of 17. Because there's an approximation of the square root of 17, which is 33/8. It's quite close. It's 17.01. And because we have 24 meters here, the length of our diagonal will be 24 times the square root of 17. And this will give us 99 meters. Okay, so it's 24 divided by 8 is 3, multiplied by 33, 99 meters. It's very, very close, a few millimeters difference. Now, that is also very interesting, because I spoke earlier about the cubit, which has been the royal cubit, which has seen to be 49.5 centimeters. That was 30 digits, remember, and that became 49.5 centimeters. And I mentioned that 2 cubits is 99 centimeters. So this diagonal can be expressed as 200 royal cubits. Now that's obviously very interesting, that a very common geometrical shape, the quadruple square, using canonical numbers, 24, like the 24 hours in a day, using these numbers in meters, gives us 200 royal cubits on the diagonal. So that's an interesting fact, and I'd be very interested to check all this up once the temple has been unearthed, because obviously coming to these conclusions on the plan is, it's open to some kind of risk. But from the elements we have, this is what we can infer today. Now here I've put at the bottom here, below the quadruple square, I've drawn here in green a triple square, 3 squares. For those of you who know my work, I've shown the great importance of the triple square in Solomon's temple or the tabernacle of Moses, and also in the megaliths in Karnak. The alignments in Karnak are aligned along the diagonal of a triple square placed on cardinal directions. So the triple square is very important. So we can see that this inner shape is a combination of a quadruple square with a triple square underneath it, okay? So that is, again, a fact of great importance. Now, I've extended my 5 by 12 grid by 1 extra square above, below, on the right and on the left. So from 12 we go up to 14 by adding 1 square on the left and 1 square on the right, and from 5 we go up to 7 by adding 1 square above and 1 square below. Okay, so 7 by 14 brings us back to the double square, so it's a 1:2 ratio. And what we can see here is that this includes the walls and buttresses. So we can see that this extra form, now there are bits sticking out. there are these added buttresses here, and I'm sure that is very important. Again, I'm not going to go into it now, but I will do on a later date, because the fact that these little bits are added are always very important. And it must be one of the proportions. It's probably 1/4 of a square, which has been added here. Okay, so 2 meters and another 1/4 of a square added here. Okay, and at the top, you see, but otherwise this double square actually goes right around the buttresses and down to the bottom of the temple, adding on this extra 8 meters all around for the thickness of the walls, giving us this 7 by 14 ratio. That's a very interesting thing to note, especially with the numbers, 7 to 14. So a 5 to 12 triangle is turned into a double square of 7 by 14. So this will give us a ratio of 56 meters to 112 meters, okay, from outer wall to outer wall, okay? And if these are 2 meters added on either end, that would be an extra 4 meters, which would bring the whole length up to 116 meters, okay? And here, perhaps 2 extra meters, 58, okay? So that would become another double square, 58 to 116, which, as I say, I realize 58 meters to 116 meters. I realize that this is, in fact, the exact dimensions of the Saint Michel tumulus in Karnak. It's 58 meters by 116 meters. So that's an interesting fact to point out. We can see from this grid that it's possible to trace different diagonals. So the diagonal of the quadruple square here, which hits the door, the corner entrance to the door, the red line here, and then when extended goes to the corner of this buttress here. Then we have the diagonal of a triple square, which goes right through the corners, 3 by 9 here, and then goes down. And this seems to point to this strange shape here, which is outside the temple. Something has been added on here. Not quite sure what it is. It's not actually part of the temple. We can see that there's a gap all around it. But the triple square line from the corner goes down to this shape. Then, of course, we have the diagonal of the 5, 12, 13, okay, which goes down to this point. And then the diagonal of the double square going through this corner here, coming down here. So there's really interesting geometry, like Pythagorean geometry going on. I've put this image to show where the doors are. You can see the doors. I've put the units here in meters. So each doorway seems to be 3 meters. I've shown here how the doorway, by example, here we have, for example, here we have 24 meters, and this has been divided 12, 3, and 9. 12 and 12, 24. So on either side of the door, we have 9 to 12 or a 3 to 4 width on either side of the door, which is important. And each of these doorways is obviously placed in a very specific way. But again, I'll come back onto that sometime when I go into more detail on this plan. I just wanted to show the different shapes of the inside of the temple seen in this way of looking at them. Now, Sebastian, who's a Frenchman who works at the British Museum, at one point he says the following, which I've put in the subtitles: "It's a mythical lost temple which was designed by a god who speaks in maths and built by a king who understands the language of the god." This is what Sebastian says, because this is evidence or elements that he's taken from the engravings, the different texts which are engraved not on, well, also on clay tablets, but also in stone, in the diorite of the different statues. There's a lot of text, and a lot of information is given about this temple, and it explains that Gudea actually got the information for the temple. He was told to build this temple by the god, and this god gave him mathematical instructions on how to build the temple. So he says he speaks in maths, and the king could understand those maths. So he was capable of understanding what this god was saying to him and translating it to make it into an earthly physical object. Okay, now this is very important because in my different work I've talked a lot about the quadrivium, which is, there's a thing called the liberal arts, which are 7 subjects, and they're composed of the quadrivium and the trivium. The quadrivium are the 4 sciences, okay? So the quadrivium is first number, and then geometry, which is number in space, and then music, which is number in time, music harmony, number in time, and then astronomy, which is number in time and space. Okay, so that's the quadrivium, and the quadrivium is a way to link to this is what is said about the quadrivium. If you study the quadrivium and learn the quadrivium, it is a way to link to the spirit The spirit is known as higher knowledge, basically. And this higher knowledge can communicate with beings if they raise their level high enough to understand what the spirit is saying. And you can get to that level through study of the quadrivium, according to the ancient way of looking at things. Okay, so all the Pythagoreans studied the quadrivium, and we have knowledge of it going through history. This is not my subject, but I can come back onto it if anybody's interested. I've talked a lot about this in my videos in France. I've been doing videos in France for at least 15 years, so but in French. So this is very interesting because what is said on this statue is very similar to the principles given through the quadrivium, okay? And it's also very similar. So here you can see the statue with all the writing on it in incredible detail. And he points out one particular part of text here, which you can see here, which he says can be found very, very frequently. He says basically it's to be found on virtually everything. This simple sentence can be found repeated on all the different statues. And in Sumerian, he says, I'm translating, it means to make things function as they should. Now that's very interesting, because this suggests that things don't function as they should, and that human beings have to intervene to make things function as they should. If they follow these specific rules, this specific science, which is given to them, then here on Earth, they can make things function as they should, suggesting, therefore, that Earth is in a dysfunctioning state and needs help. And that's a kind of take on things that I've had for many years. So it's very interesting to see this put out on this video in the British Museum. So basically, to kind of maintain the cosmic order, this is what Sebastian carries on to say, basically to kind of maintain the cosmic order that was established by the gods from the beginning of time. So that is what he is doing. Maintain the cosmic order that was established by the gods from the beginning of time. But apparently, this cosmic order has somehow gone wrong on planet Earth. So things don't function as they should. So there's a cosmic order, and human beings have to intervene to re-establish this cosmic order. Now, that's an idea that can be found all over the world, in different traditions all over the world. Not much in present-day society. Not many people think that they should be acting in some way to make the world function according to cosmic law. But we'll get back into this in different videos. Now, of course, this is the same principle as the one I show in the film, my film, Megaliths, Forgotten World, about text written in the Bible, where it is said in the Bible that God speaks directly to Moses, and he says that he wants him to build a sanctuary so that he can dwell among the people. In other words, that the laws of heaven and even the being, the spirit of heaven, or the heavens, can exist on earth. And I'd like to point out, I'm not trying to put forward any kind of religious thing here. I'm treating this as historical information. These are ancient texts, and this is information which seems very, very similar to the information on the Sumerian tablets, right, which is very important. So Moses' tabernacle, which was dictated to him according to Moses in an exact same way that Gudea temple was dictated to him. In the film, I talk about its measurements, and the precise measurements are given in cubits, the width, the height, the orientation. There are different parts to it. So there's a sacred part right at the end, which is 10 cubits by 10 cubits. So if we go back, if you remember the plan I showed you, the final part of the temple was 10 by 10 squares. It was divided in that way, which is really quite interesting. And Solomon's temple, which was built later, was also built according to those same principles. So if you want to find out more about it, if you haven't seen my film, Megaliths Forgotten World, it's on my YouTube channel. It lasts about an hour and a half, but according to all the comments, it's a very good watch, and it certainly took me a lot of time to do. I'm very pleased to have put it out free of charge on YouTube. If you want to support my work, you can do. If you want to subscribe, of course, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. And you have the different links below the video to my film, to the initial film, The Lost Temple of Maths, the initial video, and to other stuff. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and see you some other time.